I had to re-download Zoom because I got a new computer and I forgot it wasn't on there.
Oh, shit.
And so I just tried to open it and it was like, you don't have Zoom. And I was like, fuck, you're right. I don't have Zoom.
I think that's how technology has made us lazy, where even if we get a new device, we kind of automatically assume the settings are what they were on the last device, despite not doing it ourselves. Like, why wouldn't it be like that? Right?
That's, yeah. And it's like, I have all Mac products. So I was like, you didn't just do it for me? That's fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I fully made the transition into 100% certified Apple douche just last month when I got the iPad on top of the MacBook and the iPhone.
Oh my God, I love it.
All this happened within the last year. I mocked this kind of person for years, and now look at me.
And now you're him.
Becoming what I hate.
Hilarious.
How's your day going?
It's going good. I got home from work a little bit ago. Yeah, work wasn't too bad, so that was good. We were pretty busy. I work at a restaurant, so.
I feel like most of the creative types within Chicago are either bartenders, Uber drivers, or they work at either Grubhub or Groupon.
Or they're dog walkers.
Oh yeah, that's a fairly new one though. That's like within the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So, but I'll totally add that to the list. I'm a photographer, podcaster, and so naturally I'm like a fucking bartender and a delivery driver. So.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have Nina Kern with me. I'm really glad I checked her Instagram just now so I knew how to properly pronounce her first name. She is an actress, stand-up comic, which is how I met her personally, podcaster, co-host of the podcast White Collars and Red Hands. Well, shit. So the last thing I saw that you posted was you were contemplating walking around in a nice neighborhood, poaching for rich husbands dressed as like an upper middle class, rich white woman type.
Yes.
Just as somebody who, I work at a restaurant in Wheaton, so it's very much that type of person. You have no idea how much you were just like fitting the profile with the look, with the vocal inflections. Do you hang out in that area just like to get inspiration?
No, I mean, I live in a nicer like a more affluent neighborhood in Chicago. I am not affluent, but like, it's very family oriented. So I see these people around me. I grew up in middle class America. I know these women. I know these women. So
yeah. I live in Deerfield and, managed a cafe in Highland Park for about a year. And so it's a very similar thing where I somehow managed to live in an affluent neighborhood despite being broke all the time and feeling like a fraud for both things. Yeah. So do you ever feel like an imposter just walking around your own neighborhood?
Not necessarily, not where I'm at now. Because where I'm at now, like, yes, it's very family oriented. Yes, the families are making money, but there's also a lot of creatives in the area.
There you go.
And because I'm a little more north, the rent is cheaper. So I know that the other creatives don't have any money either.
There you go.
But when I was in Lincoln Park, I definitely was like, I do not belong here.
Yeah, that's very much where I'm at right now. But I mean, I relish being an outsider wherever the fuck I go. Like, I'm always almost one thing, not quite another. So it is what it is. How long have you been doing stand-up comedy for?
So I first ever did stand-up. It'll be 4 years ago in August, but then I didn't start getting consistent with stand-up until the fall of 2019. And so I don't really count the first time as like, I've been doing this for 4 years, because I did it once, I waited months, did it again, waited months. I was like such big gaps. I really started getting consistent, going to mics, doing my thing in the fall of 2019. So almost 3 years.
What was it like finally getting consistent and then COVID happening and everything shutting down?
At the time I didn't think a whole lot about it. Because it was just something that I did to like, I know it's kind of sounds silly, but at the time I was doing it to just relieve stress.
Sure.
It was a hobby. It was something that I was doing for fun. And it was like, this sucks, but it wasn't like devastating to me, if that makes sense.
Sure.
At the time I was on a comedy sports rec league. And when we had to stop doing that because of COVID, that felt devastating.
Gotcha.
And, I started doing the Zoom mics and those were tolerable for me. And then there was Zoom improv, but that was completely intolerable for me. I could not do it. So I stepped back from improv. I started doing more stand-up. And actually I contribute Zoom comedy to why I'm at where I'm at today.
How so?
I was still really consistent with Zoom comedy and I was getting booked on Zoom shows. And so then, and I was not even thinking like, oh, this is going to help me out down the road. I was just like, I'm bored. It was either like sit in the living room and watch TV with my roommates again.
Right.
Or do this mic. And like see some people that I used to see. And like, it was some sense of normalcy. Like it wasn't normal, obviously, but it just was some sense of normalcy. And I think that there were people who saw that I was consistent and recognized that I was consistent. And then I also think it helped as well because I was very fresh in the scene, but now these people who don't know me are seeing me on Zoom. So that helped as well. When we were coming out, they were like, oh, Nina, I saw her on Zoom and I'll book her on my show. And so I do contribute Zoom comedy for why I am where I am today.
And at the very least, you were probably seen as resourceful, especially working as hard as you did during that difficult time when a lot of other more experienced comics were probably stepping back and just relaxing at the time.
Yeah. And, I do think that that's where my, what's the word I want to say? Like my inexperience helped me out because I had been doing improv for a really long time or a decent amount of time. So going from being a decent improv artist to then translating that on Zoom was painful. And like, it was horrible for me. I was like, why am I doing this? This is awful. I feel like shit about myself. This isn't why I'm doing improv. And to be honest, like looking back, I never loved improv, but because I was brand new at stand-up, I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing anyway. This is still fun. Yeah. And so, whereas if I had been more experienced in stand-up at the time, I don't know if I would have looked at it that way. I think that maybe I would have been like, oh my God, this is awful. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's sometimes the pressure of having to take something seriously is a detriment rather than something that pushes you forward. Just coming from somebody who's also just a little nervous all the time. Mm-hmm. If it's not something that I think is a life or death situation, I can guarantee you I'm like 1,000 times better at whatever it is.
Yeah.
So where'd you train at improv? Where did you train to do improv?
So I feel like I just took a bunch of random classes at a lot of random places. I started so in high school, I've always been in theater. So we had obviously in theater, you have a lot of improv games that are implemented into rehearsal just to help you warm up or take a break or improve. And then when I was in college, I took a number of improv courses just at my college.
Sure.
And then when I came out of college, I was working with comedy sports.
Nice.
And then I also did some stuff at the Playground Theater.
What is comedy sports for people who don't know?
Comedy sports is a improv theater that well, now I'm not, I think they're at the Den now, but anyways, they have multiple locations in multiple different cities, and it is short form improv. So that means that like the games are short. It's more like the stuff that you see on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Those kind of styled games, just for people who aren't as familiar with improv. But so it's a lot of short games. You have two teams that compete against each other and you're trying to get points. It was a lot of fun. I grew a lot as an artist. Now I was on like their student league, not like one of their not their performers. But yeah, it was a really good growing experience for me through that whole process. And then like having to go to Zoom and starting to do more stand-up on Zoom, I kind of was able to figure out that improv really isn't for me. I would get really, even in person, I would get really stressed out when I would do improv. I would be really worried about, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Am I going to let my team down? And I really tried hard to make it my thing, but it was not my thing. Whereas I felt like stand-up, I'm in charge of the stage at that point. It's like if I mess up, if I don't do good, there aren't other people relying on me, if that makes sense. And so I'm kind of grateful that this, like, it's not that's not the best thing that came out of lockdown, but you know, it helped me kind of figure out where my real passions lied.
Definitely. Was it harder to gauge what material was working and what wasn't without an audience while doing those Zoom mics?
Oh, absolutely.
How are you able to figure that out in the meantime?
You know, you have the lag in the laughs, but you do get the laughs at some point. And I was living with roommates at the time, so if they laughed, I was like, okay, I'm all right. Like,
there you go.
But yeah, that was definitely a struggle. Like, is this funny? Is it not funny?
Yeah, Jesus, I couldn't imagine. The first time you ever stepped on stage, like the first set you ever did, what was it and how did it go?
So the first set I ever did, I actually did it at a fundraising event. At the time, I was in a web series and we were doing a fundraiser, and the fundraiser was a variety show. And a big theme of the web series was like doing things that scared you, doing things that you've never done before. And I knew that I really wanted to do stand-up comedy. That was something I knew I wanted to try. I knew I wanted to do it. But I was first of all, very unsure how to go about that. And then also just very nervous about it. At that time, I felt like I needed to take a stand-up class, which looking back, I'm so grateful I did not waste like $300 on a stand-up comedy class. But yeah, so that was where I did my first set. I did pretty good. I mean, I did fine. I was in a very supportive room, which was great. I have watched that tape back and I'm like, oh my God, like I had it so memorized. It didn't read as stand-up. It almost read as a monologue, if that makes sense, because I do have an acting background. And so, it definitely had room for improvement, but it went all right.
That is one thing I really do appreciate about the comedy community in Chicago is what you just mentioned, just the level of support a lot of them have for one another. And I'm not saying, it's anybody. You can throw a rock and you can hit 6 petty ass comics. But I mean, for example, the night I met you, it was at a mic organized by Ariel Julie and Bob Kane. Kevin Kellum was there. And these are all, people I met through photography and podcasting. I would never, ever try to be a comic on my own. But one thing that keeps coming back to these mics is just the way I see, people who had gone on already or people who had yet to go on, just silently rooting for whoever's on stage. It's kind of goes against that stereotype is like of all artists are self-involved and fucked up and so on and so forth. Do you think being where you were or around the community you have been around has helped you go as far as you have?
I'm going to say yes, because if I had started, so I'm originally from the Akron area in Ohio.
Okay.
There is, I don't know if I would have done as well if I had started in Akron, to be 100% honest with you. There are barely any women comics in that scene in Ohio in general. Like, there's not very many Ohio-based women comics. So it would have definitely been a lot more challenging now. Granted, in Chicago, there still is a huge difference between it. Like, there's a huge disparity of how many male comics there are and how many female comics there are. There's still a large difference in men getting booked more than women. But I do think that if I had been in a smaller city, that it would have I would have had more challenges. I do think that.
Okay. Yeah. So I had it at the tip of my tongue. God damn it. So you kind of came up and honed your craft by doing the Zoom open mics. Something I noticed that you do online is you're kind of picking apart or observing internet trends, TikTok, online dating. You have this great segment where you kind of read these Tinder messages that dudes sent you. And even like, I'm newly single and just, oh my God, that whole thing is so fucking awful. I was on Tinder for maybe 20 minutes. But do you attribute internet culture to the style that you have created for yourself in the last few years?
I do definitely think that it has influenced my comedy. A large part of that is because social media has become so crucial in what we do. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating. It's a game that, like, I was even telling somebody the other night, I was like, I wish I didn't have to do this. I was like, I wish I didn't have to like worry about posting these TikToks and worry about posting these stupid Instagram reels. And like, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it. But I think that a really big reason that it's kind of a necessary evil. Yeah. And the only thing I will say is that yes, it does give you more content ideas. You see certain things. It does get you out there more. There are huge benefits of that. But yeah, I do think that, well, now it was on the tip of my tongue and I lost my train of thought, but I do definitely use the internet to help me in my comedy.
Okay. Tell me about your podcast, White Collars and Red Hands. I noticed it got kind of a spotlight feature on Spotify. How did that begin, and what do you attribute to the success of it so far?
So the podcast that I'm on, White Collars, Red Hands, which streams everywhere podcasts are available. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, Podster, Anchor, wherever you can find it, it's there. But the way that it started, my coworker, his name's Kashan Bachelor. He is also a Chicago comic, but he is an improv artist. He does not do stand-up. He and I were working at a restaurant together, and we'd been working together for quite a long time. And he came up to me one day and he was like, "Hey, I've got this podcast idea. I want to do it. Will you do it with me?" And I was like, and this was still 2020, height of the pandemic. I wasn't doing anything else. And I was like, oh, this will be like super fun. And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do it.
I want a reason to talk to other people. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm allowed to go to your house because we're working on a project together. Yes, I will do this with you. And so, that's why it started. It was actually all Kashan's idea. To be 100% honest with you, white collar crime was not anything that I was interested in prior to starting the podcast. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, it's your idea. I'll just tag along. Well, now I am interested in it. And I am like, holy shit, this is really fucked up and people need to know about it. But so that's how it originated. I think there's a couple things that I would say is why we are as successful as we are. One of those things is it's a pretty niche topic. There's not a whole lot of white collar crime podcasts, and the ones that do exist have not been doing as many episodes as we've been doing. We're on our 8th season. We have over 70 episodes. Like, we've been very consistent, which I think is also hugely crucial to that. Has been just a huge part of our success thus far.
Oh, I've been fucking up. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, just we've been really consistent. And then I think the other thing too is like almost 2 years ago when we started to where we are now, the amount, like the quality of our podcast is a lot better. We've made a lot of changes in order to make it better. And I definitely think like those people who have been with us from the beginning can recognize that and do recognize that. And so those are what I contribute to it being as successful as it has been.
Fuck yeah. I guess the last thing I'm going to ask, you entered yourself into the Maxim Cover Contest.
Yeah.
What brought that on? I mean, not saying you shouldn't. It just, and I recognize that I barely know you. I've met you once, but it also wasn't something I would have expected you to go along with. And I'm curious as to how it happened.
So I started doing some modeling a couple of years ago, actually during the pandemic as well, which is random. I had, his name is Sage. His photography Instagram is 4% Vision. He reached out to me on Instagram. I don't even know what he would have seen of mine, but he's a Chicago photographer and he messaged me and he was like, hey, I'm growing my portfolio. I would love to shoot you. And I was like, all right, whatever. And he was like, it has to be outdoors, obviously, because at the time, it was it was COVID time still. He's like, but I'd love to do an outdoor shoot. This is what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm down with that. And so that's where the modeling thing kind of started. And I've just been basically doing it for fun ever since. And so I really have only worked with Chicago photographers, but it's just been something fun that I started doing. And I was on Instagram one day and an ad popped up for the Maxim competition. They're like, enter to be the cover girl. And I was like, is this real? And so then I did a little bit more research and I was like, I mean, it looks legit. And so I was like, well, the worst thing that can happen is that they don't accept me and they say no. And then I'm in the same exact spot that I'm in right now. And plus, if I win a lot of money and I'm poor. So I was like, hell yeah, I want $25,000. That's awesome. I mean, obviously some of that's going to go to taxes, but whatever, it's a lot.
They don't need to know.
It's a lot more money than I've got sitting in my bank account right now. So I was like, fuck it, let's just do it. And so I submitted and then they accepted me.
Thanks.
And luckily if you go on my Instagram and stuff like that, and you go on my TikTok, I don't have a huge fan base, but I am very lucky that I have a supportive fan base.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people who have really gone out and really taken the time to vote for me and been really consistent with voting for me. And I really appreciate that. Tonight actually is the cut for top 5 in my group. So we'll see if I get it. But looking at where I'm at right now, I think I'm in a pretty good spot. So there's a bunch of different groups. Cut for top 5 is tonight. So we'll see.
Fucking ain't right. Well, Nina, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to be on my show. You absolutely didn't have to do this. Is there anything you want to plug before we head out?
Just if you would like to follow me, one thing I would like to plug, do you know when this is going to air?
Probably Saturday.
Oh, perfect. So if you are listening and you're in Ohio or in the Akron area, I'm actually going to be doing a weekend featuring for Tyler Ross at Funny Stop on July. Hold on. Let me get the actual days. I'm going to misspeak. On July 22nd and 23rd, I'm going to be featuring at Funny Stop. So if you're in the Akron area, come on out. The other thing is just if you want to follow me on my socials, all of my social media is at I am Nina Kern. That's at I am NINAKERN. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. That's my handle everywhere. So feel free to follow me. And then again, I'm in that Maxim competition. So if you want to send me a vote, I would be eternally grateful.
There it is. There it is.